Believing in yourself is not magic. It's actually a skill. Remember how we used to talk about self-esteem all the time? Well, self-esteem is built, and you are the builder. I'm going to talk a little bit about self-esteem, but more about self-agency. How do you build that self-esteem? How do you truly believe in yourself? Have self-agency. I'm Dr. B. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner with over 25 years of clinical experience, but my real experience comes from my life. I have been through unimaginable hardship. I have lost 3 children and my husband over the course of 20 years. But more importantly, in this video, I have built myself, my self-esteem, my self-agency. I have gone from a teenager with low self-esteem to an advocate for self-agency. And I can show you how to do that. So what is that? Is believing in yourself? Is it believing in your abilities? Is it believing in how you show up? Is it a feeling or is it a process? You know, if you, like me, grew up in the 80s and 90s, we talked a lot about self-esteem as a feeling, like as if it was a sadness or an anxiety. You know, do you have self-esteem? And I remember, think back to, high school and the girls and the boys who were popular. And I used to think that they were smarter and better looking than me. And when I look back, I was above average and they were not necessarily more beautiful or smarter than me. But there is something that they had that I didn't have. And we called it self-esteem then. It was this confidence. They believed they were smarter, better looking. So how did that happen? How do some people, have this ability to believe in themselves, even at that young teenage years? And we talk about that sometimes of, how they grew up. And if you're like me and you had children, you tried to pour in positive affirmations to kind of counteract what we felt like we didn't get. So if we start with this word self-esteem, how is your self-esteem manifested? How does it develop? And we talk a lot about external things, right? Life experiences. Maybe I often remember, the first time someone called me fat, or when I didn't do well in school, or something made me feel stupid, right? These are some of my negative self-talk that I have, worked through. But those are things that we talk about with self-esteem, and we say, well, just positive affirmations. And that is true. Positive affirmations are great. However, self-esteem, or whether we believe in ourselves, is an imprint of various things. Yes, our life experiences are the way that we talk to ourselves, which oftentimes has to do with some of our life experiences, but also our personality type. From our personality type, how we perceive the world, right? It could also our attachment styles, our love languages, even our astrology sign kind of says how we show up in the world and how we perceive the world. So this is why 2 children with the same parents, even twin children, there's been studies that they presumably have the same life experience. However, they show up in the world differently. And maybe one believes in themselves and one struggles with that, or maybe not. But I'm just saying that just those things are not the whole picture of your self-esteem and believing in yourself. So if you're still watching this video, you're probably struggling with continuing to believe in yourself. Or you think that deep down, maybe you're still that young teenager who struggled with self-esteem. So for myself, I always talk about, well, I've done 20 years of self-development. I've read almost every self-development book. I have created what I call the mentally strong method. I do cognitive behavioral therapy, right? I understand how to build a self-esteem. And in the mentally strong method, we go through some of these things. How do you think through your thoughts? How do you organize them and make choices? Identifying your traumas, your injuries, your negative thoughts, your anxieties, doing something about all of that, right? Remember, self-esteem is built. I said that in the beginning. So the mentally strong method is this amazing foundation to build that self-esteem, that believing in yourself. But I'm going to take this to the next level. And the next level is self-agency. And this is bigger and more powerful than self-esteem. Self-esteem can be knocked down by life experience. And this is what happened to me. I remember first reading books like Law of Attraction and manifestation books back when my son Reggie was going through his 10 plus years of medical trauma. He was diagnosed with a very rare neurodegenerative condition. We were fighting this, and I was trying to believe in the positive. And I was trying to do manifestation, and if you know my story, my son ultimately passed away in 2016. So life experience knocked me down, right? And continued to knock me down. Every time I would try to believe in myself, in my ability to find answers for him, my ability to care for him and figure out how to stop this progression. But life just kept beating me down. And I kept doing the mentally strong method and building and building and building my self-esteem. Right? But life. And if you continue with my story, you know that my daughter ended up passing away from the same disorder with no warning. My husband, after a couple of years of hospice, like life just kept beating me down. And so self-esteem can be built in the midst of those hardships. Self-agency goes deeper and more powerful. Self-agency is the believing in yourself to the core, that you are who you are supposed to be, which is more of a spiritual question, right? And so part of my growth as a person, the foundation was self-esteem and building in very practical ways through the mentally strong method. But self-agency is really believing in yourself, like for real this time. It's going to the core of who you are. It's letting go of those traumas of all the times life told you were stupid, all the times that life told you weren't enough, all the people that told you that you weren't enough. Like truly being able to let those things go. And I talk about this in the mentally strong method of separating your traumas. And traumas, anything that changes your perception in a negative way. So, all those injuries, moral injuries, ego injuries, letting those things go so that you can build, right? But we often in the mental health profession don't talk about our spiritual health. We leave that to your churches, your personal growth. But I challenge that because we are mental, emotional, spiritual beings, and that's how we show up in the world. And so taking believing in yourself to that next level. And I can imagine people watching are of multiple faiths or maybe no faith. please keep watching. This is not to tell you how to grow spiritually. It is a very intimate, personal experience. I can tell you mine started within a organized faith and now has broadened to a faith in myself, in my ability to have a personal relationship with what I call God, and that God lives in me. And there is so much power in that. Please don't get caught up in the words. This is a uniquely personal experience. If my words don't resonate with you, I want you to look up things like self-agency and manifestation. Or if you believe in God, God and the Holy Spirit, like find words that resonate with you and find the power in self-agency. You are here in this world. And regardless of how your life experience feels like it is beating you down to where you don't believe in yourself, build up your self-esteem and learn self-agency. It is hard to learn self-agency with a very low self-esteem. But I want to tell you that I've often told my story of 20 years of building my self-esteem up to confidently say, I am mentally strong. I am smart. I am beautiful. I am who I'm supposed to be, right? But if I understood self-agency in that process, I would have been able to do it a lot faster. So think about both of those things. Self-esteem is built. Self-agency is a broader expansion understanding. And we all have it. It is the power within us. And if we could work on our self-agency at the same time of building up our self-esteem, the self-agency will be like the motor to build that up more quickly. I have a few questions from our listeners. The first one from a professional woman, she said, I've always had a low self-esteem, but I am now very successful. I feel like an imposter. And actually, people talk about imposter syndrome all the time. And I would just tell you, imposter syndrome is not letting go what you've already built. The fact that you are successful, you've built this self-esteem, but there's part of you that is still holding on to that young teenager who didn't believe in themselves. And so I think for you, it is a quick letting go. You have done a lot of that work of building the self-esteem. You have those successes. You have shown yourself. I often talk about, sometimes all of the degrees and the successes I had, in my 20s and 30s were like trying to prove to myself that I was smart, that I was a good person, right? That I was enough. But now in your life, it's time to take a deep breath and say, I am successful. And I have built that self-esteem on my successes. How much more if I understood my self-agency, that was all in my power. I did that. Proud of you. You're in a good place. Next question is, pain is too much for me to show up with confidence right now. Many of my listeners, because of me losing children, many of my listeners are parents who have lost children, people who have lost their spouse or have had pretty significant pain in their life. This is not just about self-esteem, right? Like this pain is like a huge weight on your chest. And if you've followed my story, you know that the pain of losing a child is the what feels like the most excruciating pain that can happen to any person. But we need to learn how to separate the grief and the trauma. The pain of that grief is yours. You are allowed to feel it forever. Building your self-esteem around that is building a life around that. But first, we've got to separate the grief and the trauma, push that trauma out of the body so that we can hold on and cherish that grief so that you can come back and show up in the world. Your main purpose right now is not your self-esteem, but I would research a little bit about self-agency, this power within. Right now, you probably want somebody to come rescue you. And that's the opposite of self-agency. Self-agency is digging deep within and finding the strength to figure it out. Finding the strength of what do I do with this pain? The last question is, I practice manifestation and self-agency, but bad things just keep happening to me. I mentioned in the video, when life just keeps beating you down and you are trying to manifest and you're trying to believe in this self-agency. There's two things that I want you to think about. Oftentimes, we are trying to manifest a certain thing, but what we need to do is kind of go deeper into why we're trying to manifest that. And I can tell you just from personally in a business sense, which is easier to talk about, of abundance and, wanting to be successful in business. And then the pressure of now I have employees, so now I have to be successful, right? What is underneath that? What is my real desire in growing this? And my real desire is connection with people. And so if I kind of step back and focus on my real want, right? What I'm really trying to manifest, that helps, right? But what happens is our anxieties and our fears get enmeshed with that. And sometimes we are focusing on whatever the negatives continue to be. And whatever you focus on, you will see more of. This is actually science, reticular activating system in the brain. If I were to tell you right now that the most abundant car on the highways in the United States is a black Toyota Corolla, you will now see more black Toyota Corollas than you've ever seen in your life because of just bringing that to consciousness. So that is kind of so when the anxieties and the fears can be brought to consciousness, and then we see more of them. So trying to focus on the positives and stop the internal fight. We call ourselves overthinkers, and we're so proud of that. Stop it. So I want to go back to the question about when the pain is too much. And, this video was a lot about power of self-agency. But the reality is pain is real. You need to stop and work through that pain. And I mentioned a little bit in the video of how when I was trying to have this ability to manifest and have self-agency, and my children still died, which was literally the only thing I wanted. I've been through a spiritual journey and I understand some of those things, but wherever your pain is right now, you probably have to sit in it for a minute. Learn how to separate the grief and the trauma. Watch this next video about child loss. And even if you haven't lost a child, understanding what to do with your pain. We can do this. You can do this. I did this video because I need to remind myself to believe in myself. Watch the next video.